Hello and welcome to Everyday Oral Surgery. This is your host, Dr. Grant Stuckey. I am an oral and maxillofacial surgeon practicing in Denver, Colorado. The goal of this podcast is to connect, learn, and inspire. In this podcast, you'll be hearing from OMS surgeons all over the globe discussing ways to improve the practice of oral and maxillofacial surgery. Most information shared in this podcast will be based on personal experience and opinions, so please supplement what you learn here with approved research studies. Without further ado, please enjoy today's episode. Welcome to another episode. Today I'm with Drs. Andrew Jenzer and Kevin Smith. These are both Army oral maxillofacial surgeons. I'm excited to focus today a little bit on the Army. Can you start us out a little bit, Andrew?
Yeah, good morning. Good to see you again, my friend. Thanks for having us today. Little disclaimer, everything that we're going to discuss today is personal opinion. Our views are our own. They do not represent any institutions, the U.S. Army, Department of Defense, or Defense Health Agency. But I'm privileged and honored today to be joined by one of my program director colleagues, Dr. Kevin Smith. You know, for those of you listening and longtime listeners, you'll maybe remember I'm the program director of the Army OMS residency in North Carolina at Fort Bragg. And Kevin is the program director at Joint Base Lewis McChord out in Seattle, Washington. Kev, you want to introduce yourself and say hi to the wonderful listeners?
Yeah, good morning, Grant. It's great to finally meet you. Listen to all your episodes. Excited to be on with you.
Excited. And you're in Washington State, correct?
That's right. Yeah, PNW.
Appreciate you doing this early. Usually I'm the only early one, and Andrew's later in the day because he's on the East Coast. But this is awesome that we're making this happen. Well, good. Could you guys give us just a little bit of background maybe about how you got into the Army and some of your experiences there?
Yeah, Kev, you wanna go first and kind of tell your Army story?
Sure. Mine's more traditional as far as why I went into it. My family background, my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, everyone was in the Army. So kind of growing up, naturally, I knew I was destined to go into the Army. But my father was in infantry and then went to medical school and became an orthopedic surgeon. So I always wanted to do that. So he went to West Point, so I went to West Point. He went to Ranger School, so I went to Ranger School. And then after West Point, which I finished in 2001, I did 5 years in infantry units. The kind of more significant one, I did about 3.5 years in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, which is a special operations unit. And I did 3 Iraq tours and 2 Afghanistan tours. And then in 2006, I decided to switch over into healthcare. My dad was orthopedic, so I was like, all right, I'm going into orthopedics. And he said, check out this dental thing. And if you really want to do bones and bigger surgery, there's a specialty called oral surgery. So I went to dental school in New Jersey and then got exposed to oral surgery and fell in love with it. So, and this is all paid for by the military. So I fell in love with oral surgery and then fortunately got into a residency and did that in San Antonio, Texas. And then after residency, I got stationed back at West Point as an oral surgeon there, which was pretty great. And then after that, moved over to Joint Base Lewis McChord in Seattle, which is where I'm at now as the program director.
That's awesome. Real quick, you kind of glossed over some of your intense training, which maybe our listeners understand. I listened to David Goggins' books, and I know a little bit about some of the training. Can you talk to us about what it takes to become a Ranger?
Yeah, the military training, I really liked. I've always really liked being able to say that I'm in the Army. I'm very proud of that. I'm also very proud of being able to say that I'm an oral surgeon. So I always knew I wanted to go into some sort of healthcare field, but I wanted to do very, very Army stuff first, especially when you're in your early 20s. It's, my bones and joints and stuff probably wouldn't put up with what I did now. But I did a few schools where you get these little patches and tabs that you can wear on your uniform. That's a big source of pride when you're kind of walking around on post. You have all these cool badges and patches. So I did a scuba diving one where you get a little bubble you can wear in uniform. Then I did air assault, which is where you rappel out of helicopters. And then I did airborne school, which is the jumping out of the airplanes. And then the toughest one was the Ranger School. That's it's a leadership school where it's based on like small unit guerrilla tactics, but this is all in the backdrop of sleep deprivation and food deprivation. So it's supposed to be about 2 months. There's 3 phases. I was unfortunate enough to have to do the third phase twice. So it ended up being almost 4 months long for me. But the hard thing about that is you're always very tired. You're getting maybe 2 hours sleep on a good day, and that's broken up into like 20-minute intervals. So 4 months of 20 minutes of sleep, 20-minute intervals of sleep for at the most a couple hours. And then you're not fed, and then you're not allowed to wear jackets or anything. I started in January. So you're tired, hungry, and cold all the time, and there's like no end in sight. So like I went in weighing 196 and I came out weighing 156. So it's a lot of food. You're very hungry all the time. But the background of that was really helpful, because after I completed that and got my Ranger tab, kind of everything else in life was pretty easy. Even in combat, I had one day in Afghanistan that was almost as miserable as Ranger School was. So it really gives you a great perspective on life. And it was the same with residency. In residency, there's some sleep deprivation there and a little bit of stress, but in a hospital, you're never cold, you're never hungry. So, getting 2 out of 3 isn't too bad. So residency wasn't it was academically challenging, but the physical aspects of sleep deprivation and stuff wasn't too challenging, having a background in that sort of stuff.
Well, that's cool. How about you, Andrew? Did you have to do any of that type of training?
A little bit, yeah. Not Ranger School. Never had the chance, and now I think don't have the chops to pass. I'm not hard and tough like Kevin, but I graduated high school and joined the Army in 2006, and I remember being in middle school when 9/11 happened, and asking myself, could I help the country out and prevent these kind of things from happening? And if I can, dedicate my life in some portion to helping give back to this country, then that would be an amazing thing to do. That kind of motivated me. I checked out West Point, ended up going to college, but it was very helpful for me coming from a, very blue collar middle class family in Vermont to get a full scholarship to go to college, and then found my way into dentistry at the last second and was lucky enough to get into dental school and got another full scholarship for that. In general, in the military, if you do an educational route, it's about, for every year that they pay for like college or dental school, you owe them a year. So it's about 1-to-1. There are some variations in different things, but that's a pretty okay general statement, I think. And then I found my way into surgery at the last minute and did residency. I kind of like Kevin, I really do enjoy the Army side of things. I think it's one of the very unique things about our job. So I've been to airborne school, jumped out of planes, air assault school, the expert field medic badge. I've done a number of foreign badges. Different foreign armies host kind of physical training and events, which I've done. I'm actually going to spend most of the month of April and a little bit of May helping to run what's called the expert field medic badge with the 82nd Airborne. So kind of out in the field doing stuff. So it's pretty unique that, the oral surgeon can just go to the field and do something like that for about 6 weeks. So I also appreciate and enjoy those kind of things. And kind of like Kevin, not to the degree that he did, but I think there's some validity in the mental challenges and the things that you go through, helping to raise that threshold. Like, I think, Kevin, you said it great. It kind of makes everything else seem relatively easy when you've pushed that mental barrier. And I think in the military, we do a good job, which translates obviously to surgery and what we do. But those are the really fun things. You get to be out there with amazing people. You always meet other people who are very motivated to do these difficult things during these schools and events and trainings. Very young, a lot of kids right out of high school up to older. And to me, one of the best parts about the military is the people you meet along the way. And so you meet some amazing folks kind of doing those things.
It's cool. Yeah, that is super unique to be able to take multiple weeks off and just flow fine with your job, and get to do cool things, meet new people. That sounds like some amazing stuff. For those, dental students, residents that are trying to consider going into the Army, how would you guide them? What kind of pros and cons lists would you kind of walk them through?
Yeah. And, as we discussed this, first of all, if anybody's interested, my contact information is in a lot of the show notes. They'll probably be in today's. You're always welcome to reach out to us. We try to be very open and honest. I think the worst thing, we never want to come off as kind of like the used car salesman thing. We're very proud of our organization and what we do. And if people are interested in, becoming a part of that, that's amazing. We have 7 Army oral surgery residencies. There's also a couple Air Force and Navy, but we train 11 residents a year across those 7 sites. So we have a pretty big internal educational staff like myself and Kevin, and we're extremely close friends with all the other program directors and staff at the various institutions, because we talk regularly, and it's because we're a single umbrella, it creates a lot of continuity between the programs. So they're structured very similarly. The tricky thing is you have to be in the Army to apply for residency. So, we always make sure when I'm talking to people that, hey, it's a big deal. If you decide to join the military and then apply and don't get in, then, maybe you're going to end up unhappy. So just like people applying to residency, doing everything that they can to maximize their applications, good CBSE scores, a lot of externing, time spent, things like research and other ancillary, kind of extracurriculars. But that's I think a big crux is, understanding that you have to be in the military to apply. The last couple years, we have been looking and kind of doing a little bit of stuff with the match program in terms of, we did a couple post matches a few years ago. I think one of the programs in Texas looked at trying to become part of the match, but currently, to the best of my knowledge, that's not really going on because of some of the logistical problems about matching somebody and then having them join the Army. I don't think it worked that well, but that is an evolving thing that may change year to year. Kev, you got anything to add about that or tack on?
Yeah, our applications are for like 2 years from now. So this last fall, we had our interviews and selection process for the class starting in 2026. So unlike match, we're going forward a year. So the Army wants you to serve a year as a general dentist, call it a snowbird year. Usually they're able to put you at the same Army base or Army post where you're going to be doing your residency. So in the clinic where I'm at Fort Lewis in Washington, our two snowbird, soon to be PGY1s are in the same clinic as us. They're doing general dentistry, but if they have downtime, and then they're actually allowed sometimes just to spend the day over with us. So they'll go to the OR and hold the learning sticks and retract with us. They can do some teeth with us, but they're around the program during the first year. The other, Grant, as you had asked, what are kind of the differences of doing military? The two big, huge benefits that I see of doing a military residency is one, the pay. You can look up how much you come in as a captain, which is kind of skipping a few ranks in the military. So it's like the third level up from what people come in as right out of college. So you come in as a captain, so you can look up the pay rate for a captain, and then you actually get an additional pay bonus for being a dentist. So the pay is very comfortable while you're going through residency. And I know friends from dental school that did oral surgery were kind of struggling, living on ramen stuff as maybe you did, Grant, but it's a very, very comfortable life financially. You get a housing allowance, you get a subsistence allowance, you get a pretty competitive pay. So you're paid very well. So like finances aren't really a big concern. You're not going to have any debt when you come out of military residency. The other big benefit that I like of the military is that it's the patient pool and it's socialized medicine. So the people that you're dealing with daily are military people, and so they're incentivized to recover quickly and follow your post-op instructions. So in the military, we do trauma rotations. As most listeners know, where you're kind of encountering unmotivated people who sometimes make poor decisions. In the military, you get young, healthy, mostly ASA1 people that are motivated. So the patient pool is great to work with. For example, somebody no-shows an appointment, like you can get them in trouble. So everyone's motivated to come to their post-ops and eval appointments. And it's socialized medicine. So the pay aspect, there are sort of budgetary constraints, so you can't, go crazy buying stuff. But generally, if you're interested in a product, if you want to try a procedure, then getting patient buy-in is pretty easy because everything is free for them. And then people kind of believe you have the patient's best interests at heart. So financially, you're able to, try new products and buy things. The main downside that I see of military oral surgery is the moving, which I don't completely agree with seeing that as a downside. A lot of people, when you get into residencies, especially from my dental school, I was in New Jersey, they'd go to residencies in other states. So they had to move temporarily, which in the military, you have to move temporarily. But, majority of people when they're doing this are pretty young. So moving around, a couple times early in your career, I don't think is a crazy ask, but that's sort of the big downside is you're not guaranteed, okay, I'm definitely gonna be an oral surgeon and in Denver, I'm committed to it. That's where I'm going. It's up to the Army to determine, kind of what the needs of the Army are for where you're going to be stationed. And there's good spots. There's spots in Hawaii. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, which is beautiful. But there are some, less desirable positions, and it's not entirely up to you where you get to go.
Is that, as you progress and the longer you're in it, do you have more control over where you live, or is it just you're kind of always at the whim of where you're needed?
It is always kind of needs at the Army, but as you're saying now, I'm 17, 18 years in, so kind of the senior people in the field are friends of mine. So generally, right out of residency, those guys will go to like a utility tour. So they're going to smaller bases. Some of them are great. Some of them are in Germany and Italy. Some of them are, less desirable in Missouri and Louisiana. But once you've kind of paid, so-called paid your dues on these utility tours, the place, if you're interested in education, the places where the residencies are, I think are generally desirable. And then, after that utilization tour, then you've shown that you've committed to the military, and then you'll be rewarded with a little more desirable locations like Colorado, where I'm at now, Hawaii, Europe.
Another question is the military, I guess, all or nothing? Are you able to moonlight? Can you work outside the military, or is it strict rules on having to work always within that group that you're with?
Yeah, there's like a Department of Defense kind of guidelines as far as moonlighting. You're given 30 days of paid leave per year. That's everybody. Army, Navy, Coast Guard gets 30 days of paid leave per year. So you can take leave days and moonlight. The other big benefit is we're a federal workforce. So there's, I think, 11 federal holidays. So there's all these, it's for sure a 3-day, but a lot of the time you get a 4-day weekend. So you can work on those, the Monday and Friday around the 4-day weekend. And then you have these 30 days of leave. There's plenty of opportunities to moonlight, which I personally do because in residency, you're not the one doing the cutting all the time. You're doing the retracting and teaching. So I really enjoy moonlighting and actually getting out and doing the surgery. And I think it's important just for skills maintenance to be able to do it. Every once in a while, I can get a little selfish and tell a resident like, all right, I'm bored today. I'm going to do the surgery myself. But being able to moonlight helps with skills maintenance, and it does kind of close the gap between the military pay and what a civilian gets. Being in the military doesn't financially benefit you over what somebody makes on the private side. It's made up. You can make up for it a lot with moonlighting, but it's definitely the desire to be in service to the nation that kind of guides you, that kind of drives you to do the military aspect more than the financial aspect.
Yeah, and just to echo on that too, like I moonlight a couple days a month, take my vacation days. It's guided by local command policy, but I would say almost every oral surgeon in the military does moonlight for all the reasons that Kevin elucidated. So pretty common and doable for all those reasons.
And what's the likelihood of going to like a combat area? Being an oral surgeon in Afghanistan or whatever, is that something you have the option to do? Is it everyone has to kind of do that at some point, or what does that look like?
There's not like each theater has one oral surgeon in it. So back when Iraq and Afghanistan were going, there was one oral surgeon in Afghanistan and one oral surgeon in Iraq. So pretty low incidence. And if you want to go, then people get kind of pulled up to go. But if somebody speaks up and says, "Hey, I'm down for this, I want to go," then absolutely you can go. And the tour durations varied from if you find people to split the tour up with, you can go for 3 months. Sometimes, earlier in the war, people were going for 12, 15 months. Nothing is going on like that currently, though.
Nice. And you mentioned a little bit about just the actual procedures, the stuff you're doing, injuries, doing full scope, but it sounds like you guys are doing the full gamut of things and kind of whatever types of procedures you want to do. Is that fair to say you have that freedom to do anything, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
It's just whatever, as you as the staff at the educational residency or, wherever you're at, it's just what you're comfortable with. Making sure you can perform whatever procedure, if it's more of a subspecialty to, that degree or level. But to Kevin's previous point about our system being socialized, we see soldiers as well as their family members and anybody eligible, including veterans and retirees. So like at Fort Bragg, we have about 50,000 active duty soldiers, their families, and then a big veteran community population. And what's super nice is whatever the treatment plan is, you just do. So we do a lot of orthodontic surgery. We do about half of it is all custom, right? Custom cut guides, plates, that kind of thing. Totally fine. We actually have a separate agreement with our local VA with their bunch of prosthodontists. So we're doing a lot of double arch hybrid stuff and doing the conversions immediately, and all that stuff is paid for, not by the individual, and we just get to do the best care for people. Reconstructions, we take turns and let our residents get comfortable with all sorts, right? Custom cribs, various cadaveric and allograft strategies, custom bone blocks we've been messing around with recently, distraction osteogenesis. So practicing surgery in an environment where the cost doesn't matter is a very nice way to do it. I'm sure I'm personally probably more flippant with using hemostatic agents and all these other things because, frankly, the cost just doesn't matter. So we can always do what's right, which just makes it a very fun way to practice because you're taking care of these amazing people and you get to do what's truly best for them. Not completely independent, but you get what I'm saying. It's a very nice way to do it.
And there are fellowships as well through the Army. I mean, is there cancer, cosmetics, all the usual stuff?
Absolutely. It's a very important goal of both Kevin and I, as well as, the kind of folks who direct this stuff to get, if somebody wants to do a fellowship, we're going to try to get them a fellowship. We usually have, about 10 or 11 graduating residents a year. And we have at least 3 slots for fellowship. And, I did my fellowship at Duke in craniomaxillofacial trauma and reconstruction. Other program directors have done fellowships in cancer and microvascular reconstruction, cosmetics. We have 2 current fellows, both last year's graduates of Kevin's actually doing a trauma fellowship as well as cleft craniofacial right now. And he's sending another one of his chiefs off to fellowship because we want folks to be able to bring the current skills and the various skill sets back to the residencies to just make our training as good as possible.
Nice. Anything to add to that, Kevin?
No, yeah. If you want to do a fellowship, you can get in. It's a benefit from the fellowship because the fellow is paid by the military. So fellowships are incentivized to pick an Army person because it's a free fellow. And then the benefit for the fellow is that they're, like I mentioned before, they're paid as a captain or maybe at this point they're becoming a major. So they're financially very, very comfortable. You're given a bonus based on, it's called a housing allowance. So you have your base pay and then you have these kind of additional bonuses you get. One of them is basic allowance for housing, and that's based off of the zip code that you're stationed at. So we're in kind of a high rent area, so our basic allowance for housing is really high. Our fellow that's starting next year is going to be in Manhattan. So I don't even know what her housing allowance is going to be, but she's able to live in the East Village, and it's all paid for by the Army. So yeah, if you're interested in fellowship, and we really encourage it, they can go, and then ideally they're interested in education, they'll come back to the education circle at a residency program in the Army.
Nice. As far as timing goes, you were talking a little bit about this, but I assume the younger you get into this, the better. So what do you guys recommend? Is it better to get into this before you even start dental school? Is there an option if you're, past residency and you're a practicing private oral maxillofacial surgeon? Could you still join the Army? What does all that look like?
I think it really depends on the individual. Like I did the math out for myself personally. going through college from 2006 to 2010 and then dental school from 10 to 14, it shook out to something about $750,000 in education the Army paid for me. And, not having those loans, I don't know about you, Grant. I had plenty of OMS friends who went to private things and are graduating with over $1 million in loans, which terrifies me personally. But however you compute that and the interest and the length it pays to pay back, it can be advantageous to start early. However, it's one of those, okay, if you don't get into dental school and then aren't able to achieve these things, you would have to still be comfortable being in the Army as doing a different job. There's a little bit of risk involved with that. You can join it essentially anytime in the process.
Mm.
There's plenty of folks who get 1 or 2 year scholarships in dental school if they've decide they want to think about it later on. There's people who join as practicing dentists, and then there's people who join during OMS residency and get some kind of financial compensation. It's a very deep world with many different packages and things that's not our specialty. Like there's special medical recruiters who deal with it, all the way up to private practice oral surgeons who join. I do know some of those who have either finished a career but kind of made a lot of money over 10 or 15 years, or and then want to give back to their country and joining in some aspect or way. And there's different financial packages to incentivize that as well. But pretty much at any point in the process, one can, if interested, attempt to matriculate and join the organization. Yeah. Have you got anything?
Yeah, another option that you can do is the Reserve and National Guard route. And what these guys do, like we have one coming in a month or so, but it's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. And what you can do as a National Guard or Reserves oral surgeon is do a block time at a residency program. So when I was in training in Texas, once every couple months, there'd be a civilian oral surgeon who's in the National Guard that would come spend 2-3 weeks with us. And we have it at Fort Lewis also, where reserve people can come up. And it's really a huge benefit to the program because now you're getting an outside opinion on orthodontics, outside opinion on dental alveolar stuff. So as a resident, I really appreciated these National Guard guys coming in. They felt good about coming. They were received very well. The residents are all very, very interested in, how they do things because they're civilian oral surgeons. So they're not, the traditional staff methods that you see every day in residency. So that's another way that you can serve in the military, is just doing a couple weeks a year at a residency program.
Very cool. I think a lot of us who just went through regular oral surgery programs got our experience, or we had some interaction with working in that kind of socialized medicine through the veterans hospitals, right? Because I feel like most residencies are associated with one. I was in Chicago. It's a whole different feel, right? It's like a different pace. It's like you're saying, you can use whatever materials, and treatment plans aren't dictated by how much stuff costs, and like more trust with the patient type thing. It's a pretty cool experience. Any other comments you guys had about that environment that's there?
I would say that VAs, having not directly worked in one, but a lot of friends who spent time and adjacent to them and knowing staff, we do have a little bit more control. I think sometimes some of the positives and negatives as well, but some of the bureaucratic things that can really bog down a VA, we have a little bit more control of, because it's folks like Kevin and I kind of running the department, making sure we're a little bit more efficient and everything, well supported by the hospitals, who are also incentivized to provide you enough OR time and making sure you fill your block time and stuff. So definitely a little bit similar flavor, but definitely like a little bit of a different environment. But yeah. Ken, you ever spend any time there, worked in the VA or anything?
No, we just get sent some, usually pathology from the VA. Like I said, we have kind of the ASA 1 patient population. So we appreciate getting, VA patients that have a little more complex medical history to work with.
My residents write a lot of consults for those patients that we sit down and read beforehand. And
yeah, I still have to do research sometimes with these guys.
As the listeners and Grant might attest to.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it seems like all the patients at the Veterans Hospital had similar ailments, AFib, diabetes, hypertension. It was, you can get kind of common. I know that's not the case, that everyone's individual and they got their own things, but it is funny how sometimes that works. Well, good. Any other experiences, stories you guys had? Maybe you were talking a little bit about your time serving in Afghanistan. How was that for you, Kevin?
It was great. The combat aspect wasn't the most fun part, but the people you were with was great. Being in a special operations unit, I had hardcore imposter syndrome. Everybody that I worked with there was just, I knew a lot of them from West Point, and they were like the all-stars at West Point. Now I'm in the same unit as them, and they've all gone on to do great stuff. My company commander is the commander of the 82nd Airborne, where Jenzer's at now. The 3-star General Corps commander at Fort Lewis was in the unit when I was there. And then everyone went on, Delta commanders, Ranger Regiment commanders, everybody went on to kind of incredible stuff. So you get the opportunity doing the military thing first, you get the opportunity to be around self-driven, motivated, altruistic people. So I really like going in, doing that aspect first. And I think healthcare is a profession, it's not uncommon to go into kind of later on in life. It's okay to do that. Majority of people are still kind of straight pipeline from high school, college, dental school, residency, but it's not uncommon for this to be, kind of round 2 in the career. I did on my 40th birthday, I was taking oral boards, which is the worst birthday ever. In hindsight, it ended up being a good one, but it was a pretty miserable 40th birthday celebration.
Jeez. But good to know and hear that you kind of maybe did a non-traditional route and it still worked out fine for you. That's cool. Any stories that you had, Andrew, or other comments?
It's one of those things. It's a very cool thing. We're very proud of what we do, and we everybody who's encompasses the 7 educational sites, like I said, are good friends, and we care so deeply about resident education and development. Like, that is our entire focus of existence and goal in life. And there's a lot of amazing civilian educators too, but if I can pride myself on something, it's that we're as involved and dedicated to the development of our folks to the highest degree possible, to be able to go out and do anything after, full scope, just dental alveolar stuff, be very successful in private practice, be able to deploy somewhere in the event of a big war and provide battlefield trauma care to the cranial maxillofacial skeleton, and take care, because that's what we owe our soldiers. So we take a lot of pride in that. And if it's one of those things, if you're interested in joining our organization, then reach out to us. We're happy to kind of start that. Come visit, talk to you over FaceTime kind of thing. But yeah, if you see us at AMIS, chat with us and say. But I'm just lucky and privileged to be in this position, and I certainly wouldn't be where I'm at in life without the military. Helping cover all those educational expenses and getting me this far, and playing a large part in determining who the person I am today. So I'm very thankful for those leadership and developmental opportunities, which I consider the cool thing about our job and profession and the opportunities that we have.
It sounds like it's a great place if you also have a passion for teaching, which I know you do, because you're always reaching out to me to help our listeners and spread great content information. So what a cool thing to be able to focus on that for your job, because I also enjoy that and it's just so rewarding.
Yeah.
Awesome. One last question is, what does this look like maybe as you're getting older, retirement, going, let's say you get in your 50s and you want to say, I'm done with this. I want to go into private practice. Is there the freedom just to stop the Army anytime and do what you want? Or what does that look like? What would you say, Kevin?
Like Jenzer mentioned, you owe 1-for-1 from the residency. So the minimum commitment that you're doing is 4 years after residency, and then you're free to go. So you can be, what would that be? 26, 32. So yeah, 36 or so. You could be done with your military commitment, and then you can be, in your early 40s, and then you get retirement. The federal government's one of the last places where you can still get a pension. So if you do your 20 years and you're allowed to retire from the military, and then you get health care for you and your spouse for the rest of your life, your kids up to the age of 26 if they're in education, and then you get 50% of your base pay for the rest of your life as a pension.
Wow, that's so. After you've put in 20 years of service, is that what you're saying?
Yep. Yeah. For the rest of your life, and if you pass away, your spouse continues to get it for the rest of their life.
Wow.
50% of your base pay.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's helpful in retirement planning, knowing
Yeah.
that you're going to have this pension.
I'm going to be here at Fort Liberty at least until 2029. There's some times in the Army when you might be extended. So instead of like 3 years, you would be somewhere for at least 5 years. There are some options to that, particularly depending on what your job is. But then that'll put me right around 15 years. So if you know my wife at all, she'll call the shots and what's happened next. But if we decide to just do those last 5 years, I think I'll be right around 45 when I can retire. And particularly talking to folks, I didn't really realize how expensive healthcare is. Apparently, especially if you have like a big family and kids, it's quite expensive. So having that for life sounds like not a bad option. But then at that point, I could see myself most likely going, hopefully, into academics somewhere. Going to a program and taking over as another PD or chair or something, or maybe I will not be interested in academics at that point and do the other route. Kind of starting to picture myself not wanting to do academics, but maybe I'll get there someday. But it's nice to be able to kind of start your second career while having some financial security at that point. So it's certainly not a bad way to do it.
That was awesome. Just so you know, it's a little bit of info for our listeners and you guys. In the private sector, I pay $2,400 a month for my health insurance for my family. So not a small fee, and then I have like a 10 deductible. I have to pay that on top of that just to be able to get the insurance to pay for anything. It's just so ridiculous. So it's gotten out of control. But yes, it is very expensive.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. This has been very enlightening for me. Hopefully good for our listeners to hear and get some good information and make an educated decision. Kevin, you're new on our podcast. So usually with new guests, we end the podcast with some rapid fire questions. The first one is, what's the best book you've read in the past year?
The one I just read was I listened to one of your podcasts, and for like the 8th time, somebody recommended doing How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I say read, but I listened to it. I finally read that, and it's one of those few books that kind of changes your perspective and behavior. So I'd have to go with that one. Older books, Once an Eagle is probably my favorite book of all time. That's a great book that it'll change your behavior after reading that.
What is that about?
It's about the development of kind of 2 officers in the military, kind of early mid 1900s. So there's like this altruistic good officer, and then there's a bad officer, and it kind of follows their development. It's a giant book. It's like 1,000 pages, but it makes you want to be a better person when you read it.
Oh, very cool.
Really, really good. And it's usually on almost every Army commander's like top 3 book list. And it's one of my top 3 favorite military books as well. So if you are listening and you are at all into that stuff, you should get that book and read it. It's really, really incredible.
That's awesome. All right. Next question is, what non-oral surgery thing do you do in your life that helps you with your daily oral surgery skills?
That helps with the skills. I really love, as we were speaking with before, I really love military history. So anytime we travel somewhere, I'll look for military historical sites to go visit. Even driving around, if I see a graveyard, I'll see if there's anybody, like a Medal of Honor recipient buried there. So
Nice.
having a hobby like history is an endless hobby. There's no end to researching history, and it's very relaxing to read about it. And the thing I like specifically about military history is that I'm sitting in a couch in the morning with coffee, and I'm very comfortable reading about somebody in the Korean Peninsula where it's -60 out and they're suffering. So I like reading about people suffering and being miserable while I'm very comfortable.
That's great. No, I am inspired when I read about people who've gone through super hard stuff through the armed forces and other life events. It's awesome. Next question. What forceps do you use to extract tooth number 12?
Kind of just the 150. I also I get kind of, interested in things every once in a while. So right now I'm super into periotome. So I'm firing that thing out every once in a while, seeing if I can just get the tooth to pop out, just hammering away on a periotome. So that's my new current interest and hobby is, single rooted teeth, trying to get them out with a periotome.
How about like a 14 or a multi-rooted molar? What do you use?
Yeah, just regular 150. Yeah, 150 kind of goes anywhere in the mouth. The ash, I explode crowns when I touch the ass. I'm cursed with that instrument. I know a lot of people, they use that for anything other than molars, but I just explode crowns when I touch it.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that one. How about what's the best movie or TV series you've watched in the past year?
Best TV series. Well, I have to go with military history. So I'm rewatching Band of Brothers. So that's the inspirational one. I'm also rewatching Eastbound and Down for the humor side. So it's been a few years since I watched both of those. So I guess depending on the mood, if I want to be inspired, if I want to laugh, those are two good ones.
So, and then, do you have a favorite quote or some type of mantra or quote that you repeat?
One thing that I really like from being a ranger, it was snowing out and we'd been standing around for about 4 hours, and I was talking with my first sergeant, who's, a lot of these guys were in like Grenada and Panama and like jumped into Afghanistan. They're old school ranger guys and they're very tough. And so we're standing on this little hill where it's snowing. We'd been there for hours. Everyone's just freezing. And one of my privates, not speaking to us, but just in our earshot goes, "Man, I am just freezing." And the first sergeant turned around and is like, "What did you just say?" It's like, I said I'm freezing. He's like, "Take your jacket off." So he had my private take his jacket off. It's like, "How about now? How you doing now?" It's like, "Oh, I'm hot now." So he's like, "If you're ever hungry, tired, or cold, you keep that to yourself. That's personal business. All it does is make other people remember how cold or tired or hungry they are." So I like telling residents that if you're tired, hungry, or cold, keep that to yourself.
Like that. Yep. There's so many great books, I feel like, by military and other armed forces people. I mean, Jocko Willink, a lot on leadership, a lot on taking responsibility, discipline. Pretty awesome that these guys are trying to help civilians as well to, I guess, just find more grit and ability to find satisfaction and strength in your life. So that's pretty cool. Do you have any, I know you're a father, do you have any powerful parenting tips? What are your number 1 and 2 tips for maybe a young potential dad like Andrew who's about to have a child soon?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I like the resilience. My kids know never to mention if they're cold, tired, or hungry. You can say the opposite and be sarcastic. That's totally fine. Like if they're out skiing and they're freezing, they're like, "Man, I am so hot right now." That's fine. That's okay to say. But yeah, keep the tired, hungry, and cold to yourself.
Nice. I need to institute that more with my kids. There's a lot of complaining going on.
Yeah, no tolerance for that.
Yeah, for sure. This has been a pleasure. So awesome talking to you guys. We'll put your contact info in the show notes and, links to some of the stuff we've mentioned here. But really appreciate you guys sharing this content and being willing to field questions if some of our listeners have further kind of inquiries about what we've talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having us, Grant. And yeah, especially if you're somebody who's maybe in HPSP and trying to understand how to apply, I am happy to speak with you. I get usually a communication like this once a month. I know the process can be a little mystifying, so please feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you.
Awesome. So great. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, Grant. Take care.
Great to meet you.
Hey, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Oral Surgery. For more information on these podcasts, please visit everydayoralsurgery.com. I love feedback and would be very grateful if you would reach out to me via my email, grantstuckey@gmail.com, and let me know what you thought of this episode. Or you can text me at 720-441-6059. Additionally, if you have any topics you'd like to hear about, or if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email or text me. I found many of my interviewees through people who have been contacting me and have been listening, and I've gotten so many great ideas for more podcasts, and that's what helps keep the podcast rolling. So I really appreciate you making that extra effort and helping me out with feedback and knowing what to do next on the podcast. Thank you so much.